Okay, I know. Interviewing is a pain, especially if the person in front of you isn't quite up to scratch. And because of this, my clients will often ask me, how many people should I interview? I think this is usually code for how few people can I get away with interviewing, but I may be wrong. And the simple answer to this question is as many who meet the brief as possible. If your objective is to hire the person who's the absolute best fit for your company, then making sure you have a comprehensive choice is essential. And it's extremely difficult to tell on paper who has the best technical competence, not just the most experience, who does their work with passion and commitment, and these terms appear more in CV summaries than in real life, and who will not only gel with your team, but will also enhance your culture. So in an ideal world, with unlimited time and no competing priorities, you'd interview all comers. At the other end of the spectrum, if you're hiring for a particularly niche position, well, you might not have the luxury of an extensive candidate pool. Maybe you've found yourself at the end of an extensive search with just a couple of candidates that meet your criteria, or perhaps even just one. With those scenarios in mind, I'll narrow it down a little. 10's too many, and 1 is too few, unless you really do have no choice at all. To filter things further, if you're using an external recruiting partner or internal HR team that you trust to screen candidates well, then you can lightly reduce that to a maximum of 5 or 6 candidates. The logic behind the numbers at this higher end of the scale is that if you're doing the initial filtering yourself, the likelihood is that around half of the candidates just won't be right, even if their CV looks good. And that might be due to them exaggerating their technical skills. It could be because of poor fit with the values of the company, or maybe a mismatch between what they want and what you can offer. As a result of that, an initial pool of 10 candidates will typically leave you with 5 viable options. And again, a good recruiter or HR professional can do some of that initial screening for you. From those 5, if you took 3 to final interview, the chances are that one of them will be a bit underwhelming, another will decide that the job's not right for them, and then you're left with 1 viable option. A single candidate does not constitute a choice, so wherever possible, aim for 4 or 5 people at final stage interviews so that you can select the best fit. Now, sometimes you'll take 3 people to final stage who are all great and all want the job, and at other times, none of them work out. But over 20 years of recruiting, the scenario I've described is surprisingly common. So, of course, we're still talking ideal situations here. For many of you in biotech, the type of talent you need is so specific that finding 5 people who fit is a monumental task. As I've mentioned, you might end up with 1 or 2 candidates to consider, so what then? Well, the key here is to assess each person on their own merits against the job requirements and your company values, rather than comparing them to an imaginary pool of candidates that you haven't been able to engage. If you have just a single individual in your hiring process who's technically competent and aligns well with the things that are important to your culture, well, don't get caught in the trap of seeing who else is out there. Yes, you might get lucky and find someone better, but you might well not. And while you're waiting, there's a really good chance that you'll lose what you have. Good people get snapped up in any market. Time is of the essence in all hiring processes. So in order to make an effective assessment in a limited candidate pool, you need to be very, very clear on your criteria for the hire. Hopefully, you've spent time defining exactly what you're looking for before you began the recruitment process. And hopefully you wrote it down. So if so, refer back to that. It's really easy to get distracted in the weeks that it takes to find people, and you might well lose sight of your original brief. If someone lives up to that brief, hire them. If they don't. So returning to our initial question, how many people should you interview? Well, honestly, it depends. Sorry that I can't be more help.